7 New driving laws. Most Americans don't see coming breaking news for every driver in America. If you plan to get behind the wheel in January 2026, there are 7 major driving law changes you need to know right now. These are not minor updates buried in fine print. These are nationwide policy shifts that will directly affect how you drive, how much you pay, and what happens if you make a mistake, even an unintentional one. Some of these laws are already being enforced quietly in certain states. Others will expand rapidly or go fully nationwide starting in January. And here's the reality most drivers don't realize. There is no grandfathering, no warning period, no grace window. If you have a valid driver's license, these rules apply to you. Daily commuters, weekend drivers, seniors who only drive to the grocery store, everyone. If you're not prepared, these changes can cost you hundreds, even thousands of dollars in fines, insurance increases, and legal fees. Costs that don't disappear after one ticket. This isn't fear-mongering. This is about protecting your wallet, your driving record, and your independence. Over the next few minutes, we'll break down each of these 7 changes, clearly, calmly, and without hype, so you know exactly what's coming and how to protect yourself before the rules hit. Because once enforcement starts, learning the law the hard way is the most expensive option. Hands-free laws are expanding and the penalties are exploding. Let's start with the change that will catch more drivers off guard than anything else on this list: hands-free cell phone laws. Many drivers think this is old news. They assume this has already been dealt with, but starting January 2026, these laws are expanding dramatically, and the penalties are becoming far more severe. More than a dozen states are either introducing brand new distracted driving laws or aggressively tightening the ones already on the books. And here's the key difference. The fines are no longer small inconveniences. First-time violations that once cost $50 or $100 are jumping to $200, $500, even $1,000 in some states. Repeat offenses can lead to points on your license, mandatory driver education classes you must pay for, and in some cases, temporary license suspension. That's not just a ticket. That's a disruption to your entire life. But the real damage often comes later. Insurance companies treat distracted driving as a serious risk factor. One citation can raise your premiums 15 to 30%, sometimes more. And those increases don't disappear after a few months. They can follow you for 3 to 5 years. Even more important, what counts as a violation has changed. Holding your phone, even briefly, checking it at a red light, scrolling for directions, answering a call without hands-free. All of it can now trigger a ticket. No warnings, no exceptions. Traffic cameras are everywhere, and they don't miss. Now we move to a change that many drivers won't realize is affecting them until a ticket shows up in the mail. Automated traffic enforcement, speed cameras, red light cameras, and expanded surveillance zones. Starting January 2026, hundreds, possibly thousands, of new traffic cameras are being installed across the United States. Major states and cities are expanding aggressively, and the rules around these cameras are getting much stricter. In the past, many speed cameras only triggered if you were going 10 or 11 miles per hour over the limit. That buffer is disappearing. In some areas, going just 5 or 6 miles per hour over the posted speed limit is now enough to generate a ticket. Red light cameras are also changing. Grace periods are shrinking or being eliminated entirely. If even the front of your vehicle crosses the stop line a fraction of a second after the light turns red, the system records it. The camera doesn't care why. It doesn't care if traffic was heavy. It doesn't care if someone was tailgating you. It doesn't care if you felt unsafe stopping suddenly. It captures the image. It generates the fine. And these aren't small penalties. Tickets range from $75 to $500 or more, depending on location and severity. Multiple violations can trigger escalating fines. And while many of these tickets are considered civil, insurance companies still see them, ignore them, and the consequences get worse. Late fees, collections, damaged credit, and even suspended vehicle registration. This is enforcement without conversation, and it's expanding fast. DUI laws are getting tougher even if you feel fine. Now we move to one of the most serious changes on this list. Drunk driving laws are tightening nationwide. For decades, most states use the same standard, a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08%. That line is now moving. Starting January 2026, multiple states are lowering the legal limit to 0.05%, and others are preparing to follow. That may not sound like a big difference, but in real life it is. For many adults, 1 to 2 drinks can put you dangerously close to that limit, sometimes over it, even if you feel completely fine. Under these new rules, I felt okay to drive is no longer protection. First-time DUI penalties are becoming far harsher. Fines can range from $1,000 to $2,500 or more. License suspension can last months. Mandatory alcohol education programs add more cost. And that's just the beginning. Insurance premiums often double or triple, staying elevated for years. Legal fees, court costs, and required devices like ignition interlocks can push the total cost of a single DUI to $15,000 or more. And for repeat offenses, the consequences escalate quickly, including felony charges and jail time. The message from lawmakers is unmistakable. If you drink even a little, do not drive, because the financial and legal fallout can follow you for the rest of your life. Electric vehicles and emissions. New costs. Most drivers didn't expect. Now let's talk about a change that surprises many drivers, especially those who thought they were saving money. Electric vehicles and emissions rules are changing. Starting January 2026, several states are introducing new registration fees for electric vehicles. Why? Because EV drivers don't pay gas taxes, the taxes that traditionally fund road maintenance and infrastructure. States are now closing that gap. In places like Texas, Ohio, Virginia, Georgia, and others, EV owners will pay an additional annual fee, often between $100 and $200 on top of normal registration costs. Some states are also testing mileage-based fees, charging drivers based on how many miles they drive each year, regardless of whether the car is electric or gas-powered. If you bought an EV expecting lower ownership costs, this could be an unpleasant surprise. But that's only half the story. Gas-powered vehicles are also facing tighter rules. Several states are implementing stricter emissions testing standards, especially for older vehicles. Cars that passed emissions tests for years may now fail under the new thresholds, forcing repairs before registration can be renewed. For many drivers, that means hundreds of dollars in unexpected repair bills, and in some major cities, older vehicles that don't meet emission standards may face restricted access or congestion fees. The takeaway is simple. Vehicle ownership in 2026 is changing, and budgeting for it now matters. Reckless driving laws are expanding faster than you think. Next on the list is a rule change that's catching many everyday drivers by surprise. Reckless driving laws are getting much tougher and much broader. These laws are no longer aimed only at street racers or extreme behavior. Starting January 2026, several states are expanding what legally counts as reckless driving. That includes excessive speeding, aggressive lane changes, tailgating, weaving through traffic, sudden acceleration, or hard braking driven by frustration. In states like Florida, Georgia, Nevada, and California, penalties are increasing sharply. First-time offenses can now mean thousands of dollars in fines, immediate vehicle impoundment, and license suspension. In some cases, your car can be towed on the spot and held for weeks, at your expense. Repeat offenses escalate quickly. What once resulted in a ticket can now become a criminal charge, even a felony in certain situations. And here's the part most people don't realize. You don't have to be racing. If an officer believes your driving behavior puts others at risk, you can be charged with reckless driving, even during a busy commute. Running late, feeling stressed, trying to get around traffic, those moments of impatience can now carry life-changing consequences. The message from lawmakers is clear. Calm driving isn't just safer anymore, it's legally essential. License renewal is getting harder, especially for older drivers. Now we come to a change that directly affects millions of older Americans. Driver's license renewal is no longer automatic. Starting January 2026, several states are tightening renewal requirements, and older drivers are the primary focus. States like California, Florida, Illinois, and Pennsylvania are expanding rules that require additional testing for drivers over a certain age, often 70 or 75. That can include vision exams, written knowledge tests, and in some cases behind-the-wheel road tests. For many seniors who have driven safely for decades, this feels unexpected, even unfair. But lawmakers argue these changes are about safety. As people age, Vision can decline, reaction times can slow, medical conditions can develop quietly. That's why medical disclosure rules are also expanding. Drivers with conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, epilepsy, or sleep apnea may be required to submit doctor certification proving they are safe to drive. This means renewing your license may no longer be a simple visit to the DMV. It may require appointments booked weeks in advance, medical paperwork, testing you haven't taken in decades, and if you fail, you may face restrictions, mandatory courses, or even temporary loss of driving privileges. The takeaway is clear. Preparation matters. Waiting until your license expires could leave you without legal permission to drive, even if you've never had an accident in your life. Small violations, much bigger fines. Now let's talk about something that sounds minor, but quietly drains more money from drivers than almost anything else. Parking tickets and minor traffic fines are going up. Starting January 2026, cities and states across the country are raising fines that haven't been adjusted in years, sometimes decades. What used to be a $25 parking ticket is becoming $50, even $75. A small speeding ticket that once cost $100 can now run $150 to $250 or more. And this isn't limited to big cities. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, they're leading the way. But smaller cities and suburbs are following fast. The reason is simple. Cities say higher fines are needed to keep up with inflation, cover enforcement costs, and discourage repeat violations. But for drivers, the impact is immediate. That expired meter. Stopping just for 2 minutes. Rolling through a stop sign in a quiet neighborhood. Mistakes that once felt manageable now come with real financial pain. And with increased camera enforcement and digital tracking, tickets don't disappear. Ignore them and penalties escalate quickly. Late fees, vehicle boots, towing, suspended registration. Suddenly, a small oversight becomes a major problem. The message is clear. In 2026, there are no cheap mistakes on the road. How these laws combine to hit your wallet. Harder than ever individually, each of these new driving laws may not seem life-changing, but together they create something far more serious. A system where small mistakes become expensive problems fast. One distracted driving ticket raises your insurance. A camera citation adds another mark. A minor speeding violation increases risk in your insurer's eyes. And suddenly, your monthly premium jumps. Not for a month, not for 6 months, but for 3 to 5 years. That's thousands of dollars without a single accident. Now add stricter DUI rules. A night you once considered safe enough can now lead to license suspension, court costs, and long-term financial damage. Add emissions failures. If you can't afford repairs, you can't renew registration. If you can't renew registration, you can't legally drive. Add stricter license renewal, miss paperwork, fail a test, delay an appointment, and your independence is suddenly on hold. This is what most people miss. These laws don't just punish reckless drivers. They pressure ordinary people, retirees, commuters, caregivers, who rely on their vehicles every day. The margin for error is shrinking, and the cost of learning the rules after enforcement begins is far higher than learning them now. What you should do right now to protect yourself. So the most important question becomes simple. What should you do right now before January 2026? The answer is not complicated, but it does require intention. First, adjust your driving habits immediately. Do not wait for a ticket to change behavior. Put the phone away completely when driving. Mount it. Use voice commands or ignore it. Slow down, especially in areas with cameras. Treat yellow lights as a signal to stop, not to rush through. Second, rethink alcohol and driving. Under the new DUI limits, what felt safe before may no longer be legal. If you drink at all, don't drive. Not one drink, not two. The cost of being wrong is simply too high. Third, prepare for paperwork. Check your driver's license expiration date. Look up renewal requirements in your state, especially if you're over 65. Schedule appointments early. Gather medical documentation ahead of time if needed. Fourth, budget for vehicle-related changes. If you drive an electric vehicle, expect higher registration fees. If you drive an older gas vehicle, plan for emissions testing and possible repairs. And finally, stay informed. Laws change faster than most people realize. Those who stay ahead pay less and stress less. In 2026, preparation isn't optional. It's protection. Why these changes hit seniors and retirees the hardest. For younger drivers, these new laws may feel inconvenient. For older Americans, they can be life-altering. Many seniors rely on driving not for convenience, but for independence. Doctor appointments, grocery shopping, picking up prescriptions, visiting family. When driving becomes harder, more expensive, or restricted, daily life becomes smaller. That's why these 2026 changes matter so much. Higher fines don't just hurt, they strain fixed incomes. Insurance increases don't average out, they compound year after year. And stricter license renewal rules introduce a new kind of stress: a missed appointment, a failed vision test, incomplete medical paperwork. Any one of these can delay renewal or limit driving privileges, even for someone who has driven safely for 50 years. There's also a psychological cost. Many seniors worry that one mistake behind the wheel could be used as a reason to question their ability to drive at all. That fear is not imaginary. In several states, repeated violations or medical concerns can trigger reviews, restrictions, or mandatory testing. This doesn't mean older drivers should stop driving. It means they must be more prepared than ever. Because in 2026, staying on the road safely isn't just about skill, it's about awareness, planning, and staying ahead of the rules. Are these laws about safety or about money? Supporters of these new driving laws say the goal is simple: safety, fewer distracted drivers, fewer drunk drivers, fewer serious accidents. And to be fair, there is truth in that. Hands-free laws reduce phone-related crashes. Lower DUI limits catch impaired drivers sooner. Speed cameras slow traffic in high-risk areas. But there's another side of this story, one that drivers feel in their wallets. Many of these changes also generate significant revenue: higher fines, more citations, automated enforcement that runs 24 hours a day. Unlike police stops, cameras never get tired. They don't issue warnings. They don't consider circumstances. They just record and bill. For cities facing budget pressure, these systems are efficient. For drivers, they can feel relentless, especially when the margin for error keeps shrinking. 5 miles per hour over the limit, a momentary glance at a phone, a fraction of a second at a red light. The question isn't whether safety matters. It does. The question is whether drivers are being given enough clarity, warning, and flexibility, or whether enforcement is moving faster than education. That's why awareness is critical. Whether these laws make roads safer or simply more expensive often depends on how prepared you are. The practical checklist for the next 30 to 60 days. At this point, the information is clear. Now comes the most important part: action. Here is a simple, realistic checklist every driver should follow in the next 30 to 60 days before these laws fully hit. First, audit your driving habits. Ask yourself honestly, do you ever hold your phone at a red light? Do you drift slightly over the speed limit? Do you rush yellow lights? Those habits used to be common. In 2026, they are expensive. Second, review your paperwork. Check your driver's license expiration date. If renewal is coming within the next year, look up your state's requirements now, not later. Especially if you're over 65, schedule early and gather any medical documentation in advance. Third, check your vehicle status. If you drive an older gas-powered car, consider getting an emissions test early. If there's a problem, fixing it now is far easier than scrambling after registration is denied. If you own an electric vehicle, plan for higher registration fees. Build them into your budget so they don't surprise you. Fourth, update your tools. Install a proper phone mount. Set up voice commands. Use navigation apps that alert you to camera zones. These are small steps, but they prevent big problems. In 2026, preparation isn't paranoia. It's common sense. When the rules change, driving changes. Forever. By January 2026, driving in America will not feel the same. Not because cars suddenly changed, not because roads disappeared, but because the rules did. 7 major law changes are converging at once. Stricter phone laws, more cameras, lower DUI limits, higher fines, tighter emissions rules, harsher penalties for aggressive driving, and more demanding license renewals, especially for seniors. None of these changes exist in isolation. Together, they reshape what it means to drive legally, affordably, and confidently. For years, many drivers relied on habits: a quick glance at a phone, a few miles over the limit, one drink with dinner. In 2026, those habits become liabilities, and the cost of learning that lesson the hard way is measured in fines, insurance hikes, lost time, and lost independence. The goal of these laws may be safety, but the outcome depends on awareness. Drivers who prepare will adapt quietly. Drivers who don't will feel blindsided. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. The road ahead is still open, but the margin for error is smaller than ever. Those who understand the rules early don't just save money, they protect their freedom to drive.